The real essence when you're leading folks is not found in a lot of esoteric theories. It's really found in what works and what can you apply quickly and directly. And one thing managers and leaders are finding today is I do the right thing if I knew what the right thing was and if I had an opportunity to do it. So what 4-3-2-1 does is it lays out 10 tools, and we call it 10 tools news you can use now. And leaders can begin using that to meet the 4 expectations folks have of their leaders, 3 questions to ask and answer, 2 reasons for stress, and 1 key thing to concentrate on when you're leading folks. And it's not designed to give them a long PhD in leadership, but give them 10 tools they can begin applying to get more out of the team they have right now. Stress occurs in an organization, I have found, in doing this business of leading folks for 33 years. It occurs when the folks in an organization are doing things that deviate from the values the organization has. So the way you guard against doing that, the way you guard against not walking your talk, is folks have to have an environment where they're free enough to cross-talk back and forth, where bosses can make sure folks below them have all the news they need. And when subordinates are trying to get stuff done and it's not working, they can feed it back up to bosses. And the 2 reasons for stress not working are a boss knows something that he's not putting out to his folks, or the folks are trying to cope with the reality that they got to get the word back up to the boss that it's not working as well as he wants. Those really are the 2 reasons for stress in an organization, and they ultimately come down to the cross-flow of communication. Well, I've been pretty blessed as a leader, but one of the challenges in being a leader in the Army is you don't put us in the safest places in the world to do what you want us to do. We don't go in places where we can avoid risk. I mean, risk is part of the equation. So you have to make sure that everybody on the team is pulling as hard as they can because there aren't any extra people. And the most important thing I think I've learned is every single person who's come in the Army since I've joined has volunteered to do that. They volunteered to be part of the organization. So it's my duty, it's any leader's duty to make sure you provide an environment where folks can give their very best. And when you don't do that, the organization suffers for a couple of reasons. You're not getting their best, and they're frustrated because they can't give you their best. And that really becomes an essence of what, as you're leading folks, are you letting their best get better? Are you getting their development working, or are you just sitting there saying, I got all they got and they're not doing very well, so I better get rid of them and hire somebody else? So much untapped potential in organizations, and folks just want to let it out if you'll just provide the environment and climate to let them do that. That's really the essence of what I found, whether it's been in combat, whether it's been in peace, whether it's been in the training base, whether it's been in the industrial base leading soldiers or out in the field. I found everybody has something to contribute, and they want to be in an environment that'll let them make that contribution. Often we get in our own way about trying to let kids do things. The leader's responsibility is to make sure that they're providing a clear picture of where the organization's headed. What I found, my big challenge was when people asked how are we going to get the digital age to work. The challenge with getting the digital age to work wasn't them, it was old guys like me who were getting in the way and didn't understand what they were trying to do. Once we painted the picture of what we wanted digital logistics to look like in the United States Army and got out of these young digital natives' ways, they were able to do masterful things to it. The more we got involved and tried to do it for them, the more we tried to hinder them and put walls around them, the harder it was. The more you paint a broad picture for them of where you want to go, what the boundaries are, what the left and right limits are, they'll do anything to support you in an organization. And that's what I found. I approach a talk first by wanting to make sure I understand what the meeting planner's end state is. What do they want? I just did a presentation where they were very candid. They wanted 4-3-2-1, and they said, we want you to be the last speaker. And I said, why? They said, because we want you to follow the corporate leadership that's got to lay out a really hard row we have to take and a really hard set of circumstances and things we have to do. And it's really going to stress us as an organization. And we think 4-3-2-1 is going to help us interact and deal with that as they start to go out and make this hard stuff try to happen. So the first thing I do is I want to focus on not what I bring, but how what I bring facilitates what you need. The second thing is I'm pretty energetic. I've had a lot of things happen to organizations, I've had a lot of things happen to audiences, but I've never had them go to sleep on me. I tend to stay engaged with them because I've sat in those chairs and been bored to tears by PowerPoint rangers and wishing I was anywhere else but where I was. So a lot of things will happen, but you're not going to walk out of there worried that it's not going to go well. Or as I like to tell folks, there's a lot of things you might say about presentations I'll do. I guarantee there's 2 things you won't say. You won't say, I could have worked harder, and you won't say, I could have done more, and you'll never say, I didn't care. Every single person that works in your organization has a name tag. And the name tag's underneath whatever name tag you give them. And every single name tag they got's the same. It says MMFI. Make me feel important. When I gave talks to kids as leaders, one of the things I wanted to make sure that those soldiers understood is how they were important to what we were trying to accomplish. And that's what I oriented on. I was not a good speaker when I started in the United States Army. I was terrible. I couldn't hold an audience. I couldn't hold their attention. I mean, I spoke English, and I wasn't articulate, but I couldn't get across to them. And then one day, one of our great sergeants grabbed me, senior sergeants, and explained what the problem was. He said, "You're talking like you're worried about what somebody behind you is going to say." He said, "Sir, when you talk, worry about the third kid in the fourth row. Make sure whatever you're saying will make sense to that third kid in the fourth row. And if it'll connect with them, it'll work." To this day, 33 years later, whenever I'm planning a talk, I'm writing a speech, I'm thinking about a presentation, that image of that third kid in the fourth row comes through every time. The first lesson you want to share with organizations like that when you're talking about supply chain and logistics anywhere is a shared understanding of what's going on and what the end state objective is. You'll get a lot of people in the logistics world that will equate a successful supply chain with stock availability and what they have on the shelves. And they'll orient on the 97% of stuff they have on the shelves. They won't think about the 3% or will lose sight of the fact that the 3% what they don't have has a significant impact. For example, if it's road wheels for tanks. If I went 90 days, zero balance road wheels for tanks for a force that was in Iraq and Afghanistan putting about 1,200 miles on our Bradley fighting vehicles every month. Boy, that made for some long nights and some really innovative solutions. But there would have been folks back in the States saying, you know, we got plenty of everything else. You really got to focus on what you need, the industrial base and how it all comes together. And you judge how well your supply chain synchronizes itself, not just what's on the shelf. How well does it get distributed? How well does it get maintained? How far in advance can you diagnose something's breaking so you can ensure that the supply chain's working enough to get it there before it breaks? The reason supply chain is so important is that there's not a lot of extra money, as anybody knows. And the reality is, these days of having big mountains of supplies in your organization in the case that you just might need it, our digital systems and our digital suites in the 21st century are such that we should be able to identify far enough in advance and just buy what you need when you need it and get it there just in time. But just in time means just in time for the guy who needs it to affect an end state for you. And that's really why supply chains are important. If you don't want to think supply chains are important, take lots of money, throw it at the problem, and buy bundles of things that you might need or might not need, and then at the end of the year you'll be complaining because you have your warehouse is stuffed with stuff you're not needing, and then you'll try to sell it for 10 cents on the dollar. In a business today, you have to worry about the long-term implications. Are you doing the right things? Are you oriented on the right azimuths? And then are the short-term things you're doing today going to build you to that end state? That's something we're fighting every day in the United States Army. We have to bring these young men and women in and ensure we're not just training them for some esoteric mission, but training them for a real-world scenario that they're going to have to go into and bring them home as our end state, to bring them home. That really is a key for us. Businesses are facing that same challenge. How do you take this limited energy and expertise in your organization and leverage it and harness it the right way to the right end state to achieve the right outcome that you want? I found leaders don't need any more PowerPoint charts. They don't need any more long tomes about, here's the things you have to do. They really want news they can use now, and they want news they know has been working someplace. I haven't just put these things out there because they think they work. They've been born from the experiences I had working with America's sons and daughters for 33 years through various generations out there. People respond to these tools and this news you can use. And I promise when people leave my organizations, when they leave my presentations, they walk out going, this works. I've had people come up to me and say, you said in front of my boss the 2 reasons for stress were, and they were coming back into the boss 2 days later saying, remember the 2 things General Boles talked about? It works, but you got to keep it in the focus and you got to keep using it. And if you keep using it, it'll work.